Broadcasting from beautiful downtown Tallahassee, it's Nantan Lupin at the Drive-In.
Welcome to episode 19, The Cowboys, 1972. Oddly, we are not following the Bruce Cabot line because for some reason he was not in this movie. So we'll stick with the Duke. Well, the great actor John Wayne played the lead role of Will Anderson. I have spoken about Wayne extensively in other podcasts, so I won't go into that again. Roscoe Lee Browne played the role of trail cook Jeb or Jedediah Nightlinger. Browne earned a master's degree and began teaching French and comparative literature. In 1951, he won the world championship in the 800-yard dash. This led to a change in profession, and in 1956, the decision to become an actor. With no training, his voice and his presence led to a role in the newly formed New York Shakespeare Festival. He began working on and off Broadway until 1966, when he left the theater until 1983. By the end of the 60s, he was making regular appearances in films. His roles ranged dramatically, such as Hitchcock's Topaz, 1969, comedies like Dear God, 1996, and blaxploitation films such as the sequel to Superfly. He was also a mainstay in 1970s television on shows such as All in the Family and Good Times. He replaced Robert Guillaume as the butler Benson on Soap, 1977. He died of cancer on April 11, 2007. Bruce Dern played the rustler Longhair. Dern began his career playing psychos, killers, and outlaws. He began acting on television and in movies in the 60s. He was a fine actor and by 1978 had won the Best Supporting Actor Oscar for Coming Home. He tried to leverage this into large roles, but could not break the typecasting. By 1981, he was back to his typecasting roles, such as in Tattoo. But these movies were mostly duds. Dern kept working, but never had another breakout hit. He is married to Diane Ladd and is the father of Laura Dern. Robert Carradine played Slim Honeycutt, one of the oldest two cowboys on the drive. Robert is the youngest son of actor John Carradine. He began his acting career at a very early age and has been in around 120 films and shows. He is probably best known as the head nerd in the Revenge of the Nerds films. While he was involved in a plethora of stinkers, he did appear in two fan favorites in the 80s. These movies are The Big Red One and The Long Riders, where he acted with his two brothers as three of the younger brothers, members of the James Gang. A. Martinez played Cimarron, the only non-Anglo cowboy. He is primarily a television actor, though he has done a few movies. He was most recently seen on the recently canceled television show Longmire. The great cowboy actor Slim Pickens played a small part as Ants. He has been covered in other podcasts as well, so I won't say any more about him here. Richard Farnsworth played the rustler Henry Williams. Farnsworth has been in the business for over 30 years as a horse-riding stuntman. When he was 50 years old, they gave him a chance to speak and found an actor that had been around for a long time. Some of his movies include The Gray Fox, 1982, and he was in The Natural, 1984. He also spent some time running around with Wilford Brimley, I suppose eating oatmeal because it was the right thing to do. One of the background rustlers was Tap Canute. Quite frankly, he is only mentioned because of that great name. Canute was a stuntman in 38 films, including Ben-Hur, 1959. He acted in 10 films. Most of them were goodies like Spartacus and The Alamo with John Wayne, both of which were released in 1960. Finally, we come to another rustler/stuntman, Chuck Courtney. Do you remember him from episode 12 where he battled Dracula for his true love? Story. Rancher Will Anderson, John Wayne, has a problem. All of his ranch hands have run off to find gold, and he needs to drive his cattle 400 miles to market. He needs to hire cowboys to drive the herd. He goes into the relatively deserted town. He meets Ants, Slim Pickens, who recommends that he use schoolboys.
Did you ever think of hiring boys?
What boys?
Schoolboys.
Oh, sure, and women. How about my mama in Cedar City? She's only 92.
Anderson is not ready to go that far, but the next morning a passel of boys show up to be, quote, interviewed for the job. The PBS West series states that the average age of a cowboy was around 24, so it is not so far out of line to use teens. The last half of the word is boy, after all. So Anderson thinks he can dissuade the boys by putting them on bucking broncs. In turn, each boy rides the unbroken horse.
My name's Honeycutt. I'm 15, and everybody calls me Slim. I'm next. My name's Homer Williams, Mr. Anderson, and I hope I ain't rode all the rough off of it.
You all right, boy?
Yes, sir. My name's Clyde Potter. They call me Fats.
Tending toward the gut myself.
Anderson starts to warm up to the idea of using boys as cowboys. After they have all ridden, Cimarron A. Martinez arrives. He is the only non-Anglo, and he's a little older and tougher than the other boys. He then gets into a fight with the oldest boy from the original group, Slim, Robert Carradine. Anderson sends Cimarron away and hires the other boys for the drive. When Anderson and the boys are getting ready for the drive, a group of men show up asking for work. Their leader, Longhair, Asa Watts, played by Bruce Dern, lies to Anderson about being in prison, and Anderson catches him in the lie and refuses to hire the men. They get angry and leave. Finally, the last member of the trail drive arrives, Jeb Nightlinger, Roscoe Lee Browne. A black camp cook arrived with his chow wagon. Anderson places all of the guns in the chuck wagon so they will not be misused by the boys. As they head out onto the trail, Anderson teaches them their new craft while Jeb takes care of their other needs. Cimarron follows the group from a distance like a mangy dog. When they cross a stream, Slim falls in and can't swim. One of the boys tries to warn the group, but his stuttering prevents him from issuing the warning. Cimarron jumps into the river and saves Slim. This earns Cimarron a spot on the crew. Anderson's berating of the stutterer forces him to stop stuttering. As the journey continues, the boys steal Jeb's whiskey and get really drunk. One of the boys falls off his horse and is killed by the herd. The boys grow a little more. After this point, they can do their jobs just like grown men. The chuck wagon breaks down and Jeb stays behind to fix it up and plans to catch up with the herd later. That night, Longhair and his gang attack the Cowboys. They beat Anderson and terrorize the boys. Longhair then shoots down the unarmed Anderson.
Well, sir, you're a pretty old man.
Yeah, I'm 30 years older than you are. Had my back broke once and my hip twice. And on my worst day, I could beat the hell out of you.
Longhair and his gang steal all of the horses and cattle. In the morning when Jeb arrives, the boys are tending to the mortally wounded Anderson. Before he dies, Anderson tells the boys how proud he is of them. The group buries their leader and then grabs Jeb and ties him up. They get the guns and make a plan to go after the herd. When Jeb realizes he cannot stop the boys, he decides to help them. It seems that this was the 7th movie in which Wayne's character died. His character was also killed in one movie after this. The movies are Reap the Wind, 1942, The Fighting Seabees, 1944, Wake of the Red Witch, 1949, Sands of Iwo Jima, 1949, The Alamo, 1960, The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance, 1962, this one, The Cowboys, 1972, and The Shootist, 1976. The group of boys track the rustlers, and by using tricks, they knock a few of them off.
Since you mean to hang me, I'd like to atone to my maker. You got 1 minute. Speak your piece. Where to begin? I regret having trifled with married women. I'm thoroughly ashamed of having cheated at cards. I deplore my occasional departures from the truth. Forgive me for taking your name in vain. My Saturday drunkenness, my Sunday sloth. Above all, forgive me for the men I have killed in anger, and for those I am about to.
They then attack the gang and kill all of the gang without losing a boy. Odd. The last one to die is Longhair, who was trapped under a horse with a broken leg. Longhair begs for mercy, but the boys let the horse up, and it drags the criminal to his death. The boys and Jeb deliver the herd and use some of the money to buy a stone for Anderson's grave that reads, Husband and Father, as the boys now view Anderson as a father figure. This is one of the few movies where Wayne is actually happily married. With their work done, the boys head home as men. Thoughts? The great Roger Ebert did not care for this movie. To him, it seemed to say that you had to kill to become a man. I don't quite see it that way. I believe that this movie was going through the group formation process. Forming, storming, norming, and performing. As they formed, the energy was high and everyone was excited. When Cimarron was added to the group, they began to fight among themselves. Later, they learned their job and normalized, and finally they began to perform at a high level when they took back the herd. Film historian Emmanuel Levy said this movie followed a formula seen in Goodbye Mr. Chips and Sands of Iwo Jima, where an adult takes a group of youngsters and guides them into manhood with the needed skills and traits. This movie reminds me of some time I spent with a group described in Red Dawn as, quote, an elite paramilitary organization, unquote, the Boy Scouts of America. The goal of this organization was to take a group of young men and give them the skills they would need for adulthood. Each troop has the goal of being truly boy-led. The, I won't say problem, issue in scouting is 16 and 17-year-olds always leave and 11-year-olds always come in. Therefore, the troop never makes it to being boy-led. Also, it is only my opinion, but all troops have 2 leaders because it is required. However, much like grandmothers, each troop has one harsh leader and one nice leader.
You know, in the late war between the states, I served under an officer just like you.
Is that right?
As a matter of fact, I shot that military gentleman in the buttocks, just outside Vicksburg.
In this movie, Anderson was the harsh leader, and Jeb was the nice leader, giving them castor oil for hangovers and medicine for boils. In this case, the Cowboys did become boy-led, and Jeb went along to help the boys. Of course, Anderson dies just like the old Scoutmaster retires. World-famous short summary. Boy Scout or Cowboy? Watch out if you're the big boss.
When we did the Cowboys, the movie with John Wayne, we had 12 little boys. And then we had 12 little boy doubles. And then we had 12 little boy cowboy doubles. And then we had 36 moms. And we had 64 wranglers. And we were at Wolf Creek Pass at 11,500 feet in a meadow for 7 weeks. And John Wayne lived in a trailer and stayed there every night. Up there, he'd fish at night. Everybody'd fish at night and go do their thing. And these little kids were like, they turned into Lord of the Flies.
I hope you enjoyed today's podcast. Remember, you can find all of the links at snarkymoviereviews.com, and I appreciate those reviews in iTunes.